So it's time to build a new pedal board for myself, and I'm going to show you my whole process from start to finish and share some tips that I've learned from building dozens and dozens of boards over the years. I've had a temporary smaller board that you've seen in most of my videos, but it's always been a bit thrown together and messy. So when Mono got in touch saying that they were releasing a new range of rail pedal boards, I thought this was a great opportunity to make a new compact board but still powerful and make it as clean and as professional as I can with stuff that I have at home lying about and stuff that you might have at home too. This video is also sponsored by Mono. Thank you guys. So let's check out the board inside of here. So here we are, this is the case and the board is inside of here. If you know Mono already, you know that their bread and butter is pretty much protective soft cases. The best stuff you can buy, and this case is no exception. It is an absolute unit, but still being fitted and sleek to the pedal board inside. So let's open this case up, see what we've got inside. We have a strap for the case and also Velcro for the pedal board. So here's the board itself, and truth be told, it looks a little familiar to other things that we've seen. But it has a few little details, a few little features that I think make it a little bit more thought out. The board comes in 3 sizes. This is actually the smallest, so you can go pretty massive with these board builds if you want. One of my favourite things about this board, this Mono rail board, is that these slats or rails are all rounded and curved and also slightly thinner. This is kind of going to reduce weight, but more importantly, I think it's going to reduce stress on the cables that are going round rather tightly on these slats. Along with that philosophy of slimming things down, I like how the side panels of this board are just kind of one sheet of metal, one piece of metal rather than another big thick chunk of metal. The feet also go round the side of the board a little bit, which is going to protect your pedals and protect the board more when you're picking it up and putting it down. So I think there's only one thing left to do, and that is to go over to the desk and start building this board. While I was off camera, I did actually just put the Velcro on here. Thought that'd be something that you didn't need to see me do. Now I know Mono did recently release a kind of modular power solution that looks great, but there are none in the UK at the moment yet. So I'm going to be using my trusty One Spot Pro CS12. I've got 2 of these. They've never let me down. We will be mounting this underneath the Mono rail pedal board. Also, a little tip that I like to do with these size boards, you know, like 18 inches wide, is that I do like to mount the power supply off center. This gets in the way the least when routing cables underneath the board. Now then, because this board is slightly skinnier just everywhere than a pedal train, for example, the mounts that come with the power supply don't actually fit. So we're going to have to figure out another way to mount the power supply. We did eventually get the power supply mounted to the board using a hell of a lot of zip ties. Now on Amazon, I bought I think there's 100 of these, 100 zip tie anchors for about £5. And I cannot recommend these enough for organizing underneath your pedal board. They allow you to not only group cables together, but then secure them to the bottom of the board. I'm going to have a little clear up and then we'll get onto the pedals, which is the most important part of any pedal board. We have a selection of pedals in front of me. These are the pedals that I'd like to put on this pedal board. You can probably already tell that not all of these are going to fit in here, so I'm going to have to do some thinking about my signal chain, about what I can get away with not having on the board and what I really do need on the board. Let's start with some absolute definites that need to go on this board. So let's clear off a little bit of space. I've been really enjoying the 29 pedals unit on my big board, and I thought, let's take it off the big board because I'm not using it so much. This is like a sort of like an input buffer. Basically, it makes your signal sound incredible. I'm also obviously going to need a tuner. For me, I'm going to need a fuzz of some sort. So that is going to be between the Mythos Hephaestus and the Great Eastern Effects Focus Fuzz. That's going to be a shootout that I'm going to need to think about. I'm also going to want a couple of flavors of drive and possibly a boost pedal. So my favorite drives at the moment are actually these 2, the Origin Effects Halcyon, Tube Screamer, and MEQ Driver. So they're pretty high up on the list to go on this board. I might dig out the Dane again because it's a great do-it-all overdrive, but also has that boost. I'm going to need a delay. I think for space-saving reasons, I'm going to go with the DM2W. I've also got this Chase Bliss Habit, which I'm still trying to understand. Maybe I will put that on the board as sort of a secondary delay flavour. Reverb and tremolo, Keeley Hydra. To round things off, I've been enjoying the generation loss at the end of my signal chain. This is looking doable. One thing I haven't got here is modulation. I'm learning currently the Cros Devices Airborne flanger, and I've also been enjoying flanger before my drive section. Now, I do recommend planning out your pedalboard builds beforehand. My favourite thing to do is use those like website builders. My favourite is Pedalboard Playground. I love that, but I figured because we have everything in front of us, we may as well do it in real time. Now, I like the MEQ driver because it gives me sort of a studio type thing, but what I've also got here, which hasn't been on a board in ages, is the Hudson Broadcast, which is again a different sound, but a more of a studio preampy type sound. So maybe we're getting somewhere here. And then because I'm not having the MEQ driver, because we kind of got that studio sound, maybe I go with the Halcyon as a tube screamer type thing, and then into the Dane. This is going to have to be a fuzz pedal up here, isn't it? Because I've got no fuzz. And it was between these two, and simply because it's smaller, I think it's going to have to be the Hephaestus for now. Okay, so we're going to have to wire this thing up. Important things to consider with power is know what your pedals can take and know what they need. So there are 1 or 2 pedals on here that can take higher voltage of power. Those two are the Hudson Broadcast and the 29 pedals Una, and I think I'm going to give them both 18 volts. I'm going to do those first so they're taken care of. It reduces risk of making mistakes and blowing up other pedals, I suppose. And then I'm just going to feed it through each of these cable ties. Okay, so now it's just going to be rinse and repeat, wiring up the rest of it. You guys don't need to see that or let me walk you through it. The rest of the pedals are just simple 9-volt pedals. So I'll wire it up and I'll check back in a second. So next up is going to be audio. First of all, I'm going to do the longer cable runs just because then we can sort of tighten up things underneath the board. So for those, I have some leftover pedal patch cables, just pre-made from another pedal board that is not being used at the moment. So I'm going to repurpose those. Alright, so we're back building the board. Admittedly, it is the next day. Sometimes there are only so many hours in the day. I have done just a little bit of tidying up underneath with these power cables and the longer runs of audio. I'm really enjoying the roundness of these slats or these rails on this mono board. That is actually helping quite a lot. Now, the only thing left to do is some of these shorter runs of cables. And for this, I'm going to use some of these Ernie ball patch cables, like standard 6-inch cables. I think some of these have never even been used before, so I'm going to use these to connect to the bottom row of pedals. Also, there's some work up here to be done. The Hephaestus is going to go in the effects loop of the Una. I'm going to start with the Una just because I think that might be a little more complicated. It's going to get a little snug actually. Okay, it's looking a little tight actually. Okay, so little update. It's not gone quite to plan. The issue that we're having is this bit here. So what I think I might try and do is put together a few skinnier, shorter cables with what I have left over from a pedal patch kit. Okay, so we're done. As long as it all works, we are done. So this is what the board looks like underneath. We have those Ernie ball 6-inch cables just along the bottom here, basically connecting that whole row. I think there's only one thing left to do, and that's to plug it in, get some tones. I'll walk you through my thoughts with the signal path as well a little bit. I think we're nearly there. We are nearly there. All right, we've got everything plugged in. And spoiler alert, it works. Well, at least we are passing signal through the whole board. So that is a pretty good indication that everything is working on the board. Everything also has power, which is another good sign. Before we get into some tones with this board, please, please, please subscribe. It really helps me out. And you know what? It actually makes a difference when I ask in a video for you guys to subscribe. Who knows that asking for subscribers actually works? I'm playing this Music Man St. Vincent for a change. I love this guitar. I do not play it enough. It's actually tuned to a tone down, so D standard, I guess. Massive sound, absolutely massive sound. I love that. We're going into the Victory Copper, which is my favourite amp at the moment. And the only pedal on is the 29 pedals Una. I'll actually give you a quick A/B of that turned on and off so you can hear what it's doing to the sound. I'm in love with that pedal. It amazes me every time I use it. So let's go through the signal path. Obviously we're going into the tuner first. You don't need to hear what that does. But then we're going into the broadcast, which is going to be a learning curve for me because I've not had it on a board for maybe a year or two. So I need to find my settings again. I love that. I'll dial in my sound a little more. It's just giving me a bit more juice on the already kind of ampy sound that I've got going on. That's going to be awesome. This is the dual foot switch version, so we do have a boost on that. Never really used it, but let's see how it works with this setup. That is thick. That sounds great. Maybe I will use that as sort of a second fuzz, because moving on nicely, I've only got one fuzz on this board, which is not like me at all. That fuzz is the Mythos Hephaestus. It is in the loop of the 29 pedals Una, so when I disengage the Una, the Hephaestus is in the loop. So. So after the Una, we are going into the Cross Devices Airborne Flanger. Let's put the Dane after it. Then we're into my main drive section. First is the Halcyon. Then the Dane, which we've heard briefly. And then I have the DM2W. At the moment, I can't really have a board without a good slapback, and this is what that pedal is doing for me, a nice analog slapback. Then we're going into the weirder stuff of this board, the Chase Bliss Habit, which at the moment I'm just using it as sort of a weird digital type delay, and I'm loving it. Then we have the Keeley Hydra reverb and harmonic tremolo, I believe. Beautiful. And then finally, we're going into the generation loss. I like this last in the chain, especially after reverbs, because I like how it degrades the reverb sound. It reminds me of a pedal that I've got called the Dr. Scientist Atmosphere, and that has a resolution control on the reverb, and you can degrade the reverb sound. And these two pedals together sort of get that vibe. there is the board. This has been an absolute mammoth of a project. I'm really happy we've done it. I'm really happy that Mono have come out with this really neat little board that has improved on a classic design, I would say. Not to mention the case. The case is, in a way, what you buy Mono products for, because they are just the best out there when it comes to cases. I highly recommend the board, even just for the case.